I want you to stop wasting your time hustling like a broke woman. Broke women work hard. Wealthy women work smart. And if that sentence made you a little defensive, good. Stay right there. Because this video is not going to be another lecture about budgeting apps or side hustles. This is something else entirely. This is why some women build wealth that lasts for generations, while other women, often working twice as hard, stay financially stuck their entire lives. And no, it is not about luck. It is not about marrying rich. It is something far more interesting and far more uncomfortable, hiding underneath all of it. So before we go any further, I want you to do something. Imagine two women, both 34 years old, both living in Atlanta, both earning roughly the same salary, same job title, same rent, same gym membership they barely use, the one with the contract that auto-renews every year like a tiny financial trap nobody reads the fine print on. On paper, their lives look identical. Fast forward 15 years. One of them owns property, has an investment portfolio, and works because she wants to, not because she has to. The other is still living paycheck to paycheck, still telling herself, next year will be different. Same starting point. Completely different ending. Picture yourself standing between them right now, looking at both futures, and ask yourself honestly, which one do you think you would become, and more importantly, why? Now, before anyone gets defensive, this is not a video about shaming women for buying lattes or getting their nails done. That tired advice has been recycled so many times it deserves its own retirement account. This is a much deeper conversation, the kind that does not fit neatly into a budgeting app notification. Here is the hidden truth most people never want to admit. Most women believe wealth begins with a high income. Earn more, and the money problems disappear. It sounds logical. It feels true. It is also almost completely wrong. Because if income alone created wealth, every nurse, every attorney, every well-paid woman in corporate America would automatically become rich. They do not. Some of the highest-earning women in the country are also some of the most financially fragile, quietly drowning behind a polished Instagram feed and a leased SUV that costs more than their monthly mortgage would. Meanwhile, women earning modest, unremarkable salaries are quietly becoming millionaires without anyone noticing, without a single brag-worthy caption to show for it. This is the part that tends to bruise a few egos, so brace yourself. A six-figure salary does not automatically come with financial wisdom attached. Nobody hands you a manual the moment your paycheck gets bigger. If anything, a bigger income often just means a bigger, more expensive version of the exact same habits, a phenomenon that quietly upgrades someone's lifestyle right alongside their stress levels. So, if it is not about income, what is it actually about? Stay with us, because this is where the story really begins. Let's talk about a woman we will call Monica. Monica is not a celebrity. She is not a finance influencer. She is a 31-year-old dental hygienist in Phoenix, Arizona, earning $58,000 a year. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would get her featured on a wealth podcast. But Monica has a habit almost nobody around her shares. Every single month before she pays a single bill, she pays herself first. Not after expenses. Not whatever is left over. First. It sounds simple, almost too simple to matter. But that one decision quietly rewires everything that happens after it. Now picture her coworker, Brianna. Brianna earns more than Monica. $82,000 a year, a much nicer apartment, a closet that could pass for a small boutique, and a car payment that makes her wince slightly every time she pulls into the parking lot. Brianna works long hours, takes on extra shifts, hustles constantly, posts the occasional motivational quote about grinding while everyone else sleeps. By every visible measure, Brianna looks more successful. But Brianna is 3 months behind on a credit card and quietly terrified of her own bank app, the kind of terrified where you open it once a week with one eye closed, hoping the number will somehow be different this time. Same industry, same city, wildly different financial reality. This is where things become interesting, because the difference between Monica and Brianna has almost nothing to do with their paychecks, and almost everything to do with the conversation happening inside their heads about money, identity, and self-worth. This is the part most personal finance content skips entirely, because it is uncomfortable. Money is not actually about math. Math is the easy part. Anyone can learn to use a spreadsheet, and frankly, a calculator will do the math for you anyway. Money is about fear, about validation, about what spending or saving makes you feel about yourself in a given moment. For a lot of women, spending is not really about the item. It is about the identity attached to it. The bag is not just a bag. It is proof. Proof that you made it, proof that you are not behind, proof that you deserve good things after a hard week. And there is nothing shallow or silly about that instinct. It is deeply human. The danger is not in wanting nice things. The danger is using purchases as emotional medicine for problems money was never designed to solve. Brianna's hustle, the late shifts, the overtime, the constant grinding, was never really about building wealth. It was about outrunning a feeling of not being enough, of falling behind some invisible standard she never actually chose for herself. Wealthy women, the ones who quietly compound money for decades, tend to have made peace with a much less glamorous truth. Money does not fix self-worth. It only reveals what was already there. If you feel financially anxious and insecure while broke, you will very likely feel financially anxious and insecure while rich, just with better lighting and a nicer car. The work, the actual work, happens internally, long before it ever shows up in a bank balance. If you are enjoying this kind of conversation, the psychology hiding underneath money, status, ambition, and the quiet decisions that separate women who build wealth from women who stay stuck, go ahead and subscribe. We dig into stories exactly like this one, the human side of money that most finance content completely ignores. There is also a third woman worth mentioning here because she complicates the story in a good way. Her name is Diane, 52 years old, a school administrator in Columbus, Ohio. Diane never earned a dramatic salary, never had a viral side hustle, never read a single finance book cover to cover. What Diane had instead was patience, an almost stubborn refusal to compare her timeline to anyone else's. While friends upgraded houses and leased newer cars every few years, Diane kept driving the same reliable sedan a decade past the point of embarrassment, quietly redirecting that difference into retirement accounts nobody else knew existed. By the time she turned 50, Diane had more net worth than several friends earning twice her salary, and almost nobody in her life had the faintest idea because Diane never needed anyone to know. Now, let's go back to Monica because her story is about to get more interesting. Paying herself first was just the beginning. The real shift happened when Monica stopped asking how much can I afford to spend and started asking what is this purchase actually buying me emotionally. That single mental shift sounds almost too small to matter, yet it changed everything downstream. She started noticing that a lot of her spending was not about enjoyment at all. It was about avoidance. Avoiding boredom. Avoiding comparison with friends who seemed to be doing better. Avoiding the quiet discomfort of simply sitting still with her own thoughts. Wealthy women, the kind who end up with real financial independence, tend to develop an almost boring relationship with money. Boring in the best possible sense. They are not constantly white-knuckling their way through deprivation, and they are not white-knuckling their way through impulsive spending either. They have simply removed the emotional charge from money decisions. A purchase becomes a calculation, not a referendum on their worth as a human being. That detachment, strange as it sounds, is one of the most quietly powerful financial traits a woman can develop, and almost nobody talks about it because it does not photograph well for social media. Here comes the twist, the part of the story most people do not expect. You would assume that once a woman becomes financially independent, every problem in her life simply dissolves. More money, more ease, more peace. Right. Except that is not actually what tends to happen. The women who achieve real financial freedom often run into a challenge nobody warned them about. Money does not just change their bank account. It changes their relationships, and not always gently. It is worth pausing here, because this single sentence quietly contradicts almost everything wealth culture promises women. The promise is always more comfort, more ease, more admiration. Nobody ever mentions the part where the people closest to you might struggle to adjust to the new version of your life, or the part where you might have to grieve relationships that only worked while everyone stayed equally stuck. Take Monica again, several years later. By her late 30s, she has savings, investments, real options. She no longer needs her job. She could walk away tomorrow. You would think this would feel like pure relief. Instead, it surfaced something unexpected. Her relationship with her own mother grew tense because her mother had spent decades equating struggle with virtue and watching her daughter build ease without the same suffering felt, somehow, threatening. Friendships shifted too. Some friends quietly distanced themselves, uncomfortable being around someone whose life no longer mirrored their own financial anxiety. Even dating became complicated because some men she met seemed more interested in her financial stability than in her as a person, while others felt intimidated by a woman who clearly did not need rescuing. This is the part the hustle culture version of wealth never mentions. Financial freedom does not just buy you options. It exposes the relationships, the friendships, and even the family dynamics that were quietly built on shared scarcity. When the scarcity disappears, some of those relationships disappear right along with it. The money was never actually the biggest transformation in Monica's story. The biggest transformation was learning who in her life loved her, and who simply loved being needed by her. It is worth sitting with that distinction for a moment, because it explains so much of what happens to women once money stops being the central crisis of their lives. Being needed feels good. It feels like love, it feels like belonging, it feels like proof that you matter to the people around you. But being needed and being loved are not always the same thing, and financial independence has an uncomfortable habit of revealing the difference. A friend who only calls when she needs to borrow rent money will quietly disappear once that need no longer exists. A family member who praised the hustle but resented the rest will struggle to celebrate the ease that eventually follows it. None of this means wealth ruins relationships. It simply means wealth removes the camouflage that scarcity used to provide. This is also where ambition starts to mean something different than most women are taught to believe. Ambition is usually sold as a ladder. Climb higher, earn more, accumulate more, never stop. But the women who actually reach financial independence often describe a strange plateau, a moment where they realize ambition without a clear why becomes its own kind of trap. More money stops feeling meaningful once survival is no longer the question. The real ambition shift is not chasing a bigger number. It is figuring out what that number is actually supposed to protect: time, peace, family, creative freedom, the ability to say no to things that drain you. Dating, in particular, becomes its own strange minefield once a woman's finances stop matching the script she was handed growing up. A lot of women were quietly raised to believe a man would eventually handle the money question, so financial independence was treated as a nice bonus rather than a core life skill. Flip that script, and suddenly a woman is the one with the bigger savings account, the better credit score, the more stable retirement plan, and not every relationship survives that reversal gracefully. Some men lean in, genuinely admire it, treat it as one more reason to be proud of their partner. Others quietly shrink, uncomfortable being the less financially established person in the relationship, even when nobody ever said that mattered. Diane went through 2 relationships exactly like this before she stopped apologizing for out-earning the men she dated and started treating it as simply a fact about her life rather than a flaw she needed to soften. Self-worth sits underneath almost every layer of this story, quietly pulling the strings the entire time. Women who stay financially stuck often, without realizing it, tie their value to how busy they appear, how hard they are visibly working, how exhausted they look at the end of the day, as if exhaustion itself were a form of proof. Wealthy women, the ones who actually sustain it long-term, tend to detach their worth from their workload entirely. They are allowed to rest without guilt. They are allowed to earn well without apologizing for it. They are allowed to say no to a draining obligation without spiraling into anxiety about being selfish. That permission, internal permission, is worth more long-term than almost any single financial strategy. It also explains why so much generic financial advice quietly fails women who try it. Telling someone to simply spend less or save more ignores the actual engine driving the spending in the first place. You cannot out-budget a self-worth problem. You can restrict a spending habit for a few months through sheer willpower, but if the underlying belief never shifts, the behavior eventually creeps back, usually disguised as a reward for finally being good for so long. The women who actually break the cycle are not the ones with the most discipline. They're the ones who finally got curious about why the discipline kept failing in the first place. The stakes keep rising the deeper you go into this. It starts with something as small as a savings habit. Then it becomes wealth building. Then it becomes financial independence, the ability to leave a job, a city, even a relationship, purely by choice rather than necessity. Then it becomes something even bigger than money, the freedom to design an actual life instead of constantly reacting to one. And eventually, almost inevitably, it becomes a question of purpose. Once survival is handled and comparison stops running the show, the real question left standing is simple and a little terrifying. What do you actually want your life to be about? This is the final revelation underneath the entire story. Financial freedom was never really the destination. It was the doorway. Monica did not become wealthy, so she could buy more things. She became wealthy, so she could stop performing a life for an audience, stop measuring her worth against women she scrolled past late at night, stop confusing exhaustion with achievement. The money simply removed the noise loud enough for her to finally hear what she actually wanted. So if you are watching this and quietly comparing yourself to other women, their homes, their relationships, their seemingly effortless success, here is the uncomfortable, freeing truth. The goal is never to out-earn anyone else. The goal is never to prove anything to people who were never actually paying that much attention to you in the first place. Real wealth, the kind that survives a bad year, a breakup, a recession, a family crisis, is built quietly by women who stopped performing financial confidence and started practicing financial honesty instead. Think about Monica again, years down the line, sitting in a kitchen she owns outright, in a life that no longer needs anyone's approval to feel valid. Think about Diane, 52 and unbothered, still driving that same modest sedan, completely unconcerned with what it might suggest to people who are never going to pay her bills anyway. Neither of their stories make for a flashy thumbnail. Neither of them would trend on social media. And that, in itself, might be the entire lesson hiding in plain sight. The women who quietly win at this rarely look like they are winning anything at all. Because, in the end, money was never really the story. It was only ever the mirror. And what it reflects back has very little to do with your bank balance and almost everything to do with how much peace you are willing to build, one quiet, unglamorous decision at a time. So the next time you catch yourself scrolling, comparing, hustling just to keep up appearances, ask yourself the only question that actually matters. Are you building a life, or are you just performing one? The answer to that question, far more than any salary, is what eventually decides which woman you become. And maybe that is the real twist nobody warns you about. The version of you who finally feels free was never waiting on a bigger paycheck. She was waiting on you to stop negotiating with your own self-worth.